Have you ever thought, man, I really like playing games, but there's never anything to play? Well, I totally get that. Marvel Rivals recently came out, and that's pretty much the only game I see my friends playing nowadays. But where's the fun in playing a game when you're just a cog in a wheel? How many times have I heard, this healer is so bad? Too much. And even when you are a good player, it's a competitive game. Eventually, it gets emotionally exhausting when you're bound to lose games as a non professional player, even feeling powerless as you face people who are simply a lot sweatier than you are. Sometimes, it's nice exploring a world where you, and you alone, have all the power. I personally think games like Marvel Rivals are overrated due to the issues I mentioned above, but I'm not surprised since it's free to play and an easy way to play with friends. Well, my channel is dedicated to finding the right game for you, where as part of my Saccade series, I demo games. And in this video, I'll be ranking those games based on my experience playing them for YouTube. So, without further ado, let's begin. Oh, I'm just gonna put that there. I have very little memory of playing Spyro 3 Year of the Dragon on PS1. I do have more memory of 100%ing Spyro through the Reignited Trilogy. For this video, I replayed Spyro 3 Reignited in order to create my first YouTube video. Don't watch, I'm embarrassed. The game starts with Spyro sleeping as this bunny named Bianca appears and steals all the dragon eggs. Spyro follows him to another realm. Now, playing as Spyro, my role is to roam around various worlds, including this hub world, collecting gems and reclaiming dragon eggs, which then hatch right in front of me. I mainly explored the first two levels, Sunnyside Villa and Cloud Spires, as I was having a hard time remembering how to play. Speaking of which, all that entails is blowing fire on some enemies and charging my horns into others, and gliding around when I'm not in battle. Overall, I thought playing the game was therapeutic as the worlds were bright and colorful, while the enemies were simple and manageable. Exploring is rewarding as both gems and eggs are needed to progress. Because I only explored the first two levels, I definitely didn't see the game's creativity in full effect. Sunnyside Villa was very dry. Still though, I had a great time, so I would play again, which I am. SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom was a game I rented from Blockbuster as a kid, and I loved it. Although I never finished it, I played the hell out of it when it got rehydrated. I was a few years removed from this game when I started playing it for this video. Essentially, SpongeBob's rival Plankton creates an unchecked army of killer robots, so SpongeBob and his friends, Patrick and Sandy, make it their mission to save the day. From there, I, as each character, would go around collecting golden spatulas to progress to the story. In my demo, I mainly go around yapping about my YouTube aspirations while focusing more on progression as opposed to exploration. And I'm a bit torn here, because I know I enjoyed the game when I first completed it, and I deeply appreciated the nostalgia the game plays into. However, I found this initial playthrough to feel empty. Whereas Spyro rewards me for platforming, exploring, and even killing enemies, SpongeBob feels more aimless in that approach. I just walk around, see a thing, do a hop or two, and then I just grab this random spatula. The enemies are just robots who I just need to smack around regardless of who I am and who they are. Looking back on it, it just felt like a big sandbox with some spatulas along the way to the end. To be clear, this game has a lot of love for the original seasons of SpongeBob, before he was doing that chicken thing. So as a fan of that era of the show, I feel it's only reasonable I at least label it good. Playing Crash on PS1 as a kid was pure pain. I never was able to get even close to the first boss fight on my own. So that's exactly what I did when I played this game through the Crash and Sane Trilogy for this video. We're introduced to Crash, who was recently created by his rival Neo Cortex. Crash wishes to save yet another Bandicoot, Tawna, who's also in danger, so he storms out of Cortex's castle to return at a later date. As Crash, I can spin attack or jump on enemies as I go around breaking boxes on the way to the end of each level. We see the world from a top-down perspective trailing Crash, which makes depth perception a huge issue, especially with Crash having a very grounded jump. Plus, some levels play with the camera angle even further. This means The game can be really challenging and test my patience often. Meanwhile, it can be rewarding when I finally do get past a certain hurdle. This culminated into a boss fight where I just jumped on this guy a few times. To be clear, I've beaten this game in the past, and 100%ed it, so my recent demo was more of a casual approach to the game. I think that distinction is really important because playing the game as a casual can be frustrating while also feeling aimless. I can't say progression for the sake of progression is all that satisfying in this game specifically. With that, I'll label it good, but if I was looking to challenge myself and dive deeper into the game, I might have given it a better score. That's enough with the platformers. I have vague memories of playing Sims 1 and 2 as a kid, so when I found Sims 4 available for free a few years back, I was eager to play it and even worked my way up into a family. However, I found that the game was best in the initial exploration stages before my Sim settled into routine. Enter my latest playthrough, where my Sim goes on an adventure to find love on Valentine's Day. Desperately struggling to build romantic relationships, even throwing his own birthday party to make things happen. The game is fantastical that way. I can create a Sim of my choosing, even giving them a family or friends to live with. I then am able to interact with other Sims and the environment as I please, although I credit building relationships as the main appeal of the game. Meanwhile, my Sim will also be sure to constantly remind me about hunger, sleep, and hygiene as examples of their basic needs. So basically real life. I was surprised to find out how much I enjoyed role-playing as a Sim again. The Sims is great because I can never predict the wacky interactions I might find myself in. It even inspired me to continue the playthrough of this Sim to see where it goes. I only wish the UI was more intuitive for console players and that they would stop putting all these pop-ups on my screen. So, with all that being said, it still is a great game. This is what I consider the quintessential game for YouTubers, as it is a game I mainly ever experienced on YouTube. When it recently became available through PlayStation Plus, I knew I had to play it on my channel. Working for some generic 9-to-5 office job, the protagonist Stanley is forced to make decisions when his little computer stops giving him instructions. As Stanley, I am free to roam around the office following or ignoring the instructions or dialogue of the game's narrator. In my video, I explore a few options such as doing exactly as the narrator says, leading to my freedom, or doing the opposite of the narrator and having him disappear on me. I also die at some point. Why? No one cares. Nothing matters. Nothing matters. If nothing matters, then what is the point of it all? What is existence?
Stanley leapt from the platform and plunged to his death.
All the while, I start questioning the existential idea of whether or not Stanley is truly free to choose if he's confined to the options presented by the narrator. Overall, this game did a great job of exploring themes of choice. The narrator is fun to interact with as he gets uppity for the slightest reason, which just makes disobeying him so satisfying. I had a blast playing this game and exploring its deeper themes. Except, I only scratched the surface. I would be interested in trying this game once more, so that's exactly the category I placed this in. Now let's move on to the arcade-ish games, or specifically Arcadegeddon. If you knew about this game before watching this, shout out to you. I own Arcadegeddon because it was made available for free on PlayStation Plus. I tried it once and loved it ever since. In my recent playthrough, I decided to keep it simple by jumping straight into the game with no extra setup needed. The game allows me to create my own player with their own weapons that I can level up and abilities that I can purchase in-game. The game features this cyberpunk aesthetic that makes everything, including the player, have a lot more personality. The gameplay involves moving through increasing levels of difficulties, fighting through enemies, while completing random objectives. There's also these boss waves that can be done optionally. And one aspect of the game that only matters in a new file are these challenges that allow you to earn clothes. Overall, I did a pretty basic run through of the game, limited by the fact that I had already made a lot of progress on this save file. The game is still fun as a mindless way to pass the time. It's a master of chaos, made even better in co-op mode, which I did not feature in my video. My biggest issue with the game is that even in the past, I only ever played through it blindly with no real ultimate objective. And so, with some of these considerations in mind, I think good is the most reasonable label I can use here. I have this strange fondness for any story or art inspired by the early 1900s. When I first learned about Cuphead, I was impressed by its rubber hose animation. A game that was apparently controversial for being too difficult. A game I eventually beat with the help of a friend. Now that it had been some time since I beat the game, I decided to test it out again on my own. The story goes that Cuphead has a gambling addiction and gambles his life away to the devil. Now, as Cuphead, it is my responsibility to collect other souls to reclaim my own. Cuphead is able to shoot various projectiles from his fingers, parry certain attacks with his straw, dash, and jump. This game focuses on going to different worlds to mainly participate in boss fights. Each boss has different attacks, stages, and even phases. This means that the game challenges you to learn each boss's unique mechanics while dying to them again and again. I mainly fought some of the early boss battles where I definitely spent some time learning how to tackle each of their weaknesses and phases. So, while I died a lot, I also had a lot of fun slowly conquering them. Maybe it was just these specific boss battles, but this game was not as difficult as I thought it would be solo. I probably struggled more when it was but for my co-op playthrough. Either way, I can't say I was as engaged as some of the other games on this list. So even though I know I enjoyed playing the game in the past, for now I will have to rate it as just good. Enter the Gungeon, a roguelike game that features these little guys going around different dungeons acquiring weapons and other items that may grant them advantages, such as my cute little puppy here. Each floor of the game also features increasingly difficult boss fights. There are also various characters, each with their own advantages. Again, mine comes with the puppy. My recent playthrough focused on going through the initial dungeons as quickly as possible to get as far as possible. But in reality, there are other factors that my playthrough doesn't feature, such as co-op and unlocking various characters and items, which I already did. Honestly, I wasn't a huge fan of this run, and realized why I hadn't played this game in a while. I unlocked as many components of the game as I possibly could, but I did not unlock everything. The main reason I did not is because it can be tedious trying to gain momentum on any given run. In fact, I didn't enjoy this run because the very few chests that I did encounter provided me with no value at all. So for me, this was really disappointing and I can't see myself returning to the game anytime soon. So I'm gonna have to say mid. I got tired of watching people playing games like Poppy's Playtime and Five Nights at Freddy's and pretending they're scary. Surprisingly, these next few games do some level of utilizing horror as well. Resident Evil 7, to my memory, is the scariest game I've played in the past, so of course I had to play it on the hardest difficulty. Our protagonist, Ethan, learns that his wife, Mia, has disappeared on some suspicious babysitting trip. He tracks her down to this random house in the middle of nowhere, United States. The house appears abandoned at first, but there seems to be someone dangerous on the grounds as we find strange animal corpses lying around. We do eventually find Mia, but she seems hysterical. Eventually, she disappears into the shadows. When we find her again, she's crawling, she's pale, and she's dangerous. So I ask her a question. She falls down only to disappear later. Then this happens. I mean, I understand it's in your hand, but like, come on, man. Oh my god, it's still better than a freaking chainsaw. Ah! In the end, I battle her to the death in a pistol versus chainsaw battle. Unfortunately, this ends with a warm welcome to the family. Throughout my playthrough, I was clenching so hard, I was sore by the time I finished. Even when I knew what was coming, it honestly didn't help. This was genuinely a fear-inducing experience, and I never want to do it again. except I really would. So that's the tier it'll go in. Ugh, I really wanted to like this game. I mainly heard reviews about how bad it was, but I thought that was just due to the monetization component. I play Arkham in this channel, so I def came in with high hopes. The game starts off with a tutorial breakdown of the mechanics of each main character, Harley, Boomy, Deadshot, and Shark. After which, they do a proper introduction to the team that leads into the first official mission. There, we learn Brainiac invaded the Earth and captured the Justice League. Green Lantern appears to restrain us. Flash, who is still free, shows up to fight him. Flash then goes down and requires our protection. Unfortunately, we walk right into Batman controlled by Brainiac, who forces us to hide as he takes down each character one by one. To protect us, Flash gets himself captured. Each character has different weapons and movement abilities. For example, Deadshot is a sniper with a jetpack, while Boomy is a shotgun user with a super speed boomerang. Meanwhile, the combat just has us jumping around shooting enemies. Ultimately, I was very frustrated with this game. The problem was, there was way too much yap for the hour and a half of the game I played. And the little combat I did explore was underwhelming as it was mainly gun combat. I couldn't help but wish they explored a little more melee combat instead. The Batman sequence was the highlight for me as I was actually scared. Until I started realizing Batman was going to knock out all my characters no matter what I did, and probably at a very specific point too. So I can't say there's anything left for me to explore here, and it's a poo-poo for me. When I place Call of Duty Black Ops 3 on this list, I will only be focusing on my recent experience with the Zombies mode. Of course, this Call of Duty has other modes, but I think this game mode alone can be a reason to buy the game. But would it be a good reason? I loved Zombies ever since its early days, so I appreciate Black Ops 3 for giving me the opportunity to explore the map that makes me nostalgic for the game mode. There is a story here, but it's irrelevant. Your goal is to survive. On round 1, I start with the pistol as zombies approach me on this small portion of the map very slowly. But as I progress, I earn points allowing me to open more sections of the map, buy perks that give me varying advantages, and access the mystery box which grants me random weapons. During this time, the zombies become increasingly difficult to manage. I progressed fairly well, but in my exhaustion, I rushed myself into an early loss. I had a decent amount of fun playing through this, maybe because it was nostalgic, or maybe because it's very straightforward gameplay. My biggest issue is that I would need to spend a lot of time and energy trying to make progress towards the later levels, which is a lot of time that I'm not getting any rewards for. I'd be doing it more so for the sheer enjoyment of it. Still, it was fun, so I placed this in the great tier. Okay, so that about does it for my review of these games. Here's the final result. I will say I was most disappointed by Suicide Squad and most surprised by The Sims 4. But let me know what you think. Was this helpful for you? And if it was, is there any game you'd like me to try next? Also, feel free to let me know which ones you agreed or disagreed with. Subscribe for more, enjoy the moment, and bye-bye.